alternative would be a worldwide depression. You know, the stupid people want to have a worldwide depression, and they're stupid people. So you can only go so far. You drive somebody into the ground and a lot of bad things happen. Number one, the Strait would never open because they don't like floating billion-dollar ships up and down a strait when there are rockets flying over them and mines all over the place. So the Strait would never be open.
I'm actually surprised the oil price spike hasn't, there's a rise of just like a 10-15% rise in the oil price, but it hasn't really jumped to the stratosphere. And I think I checked the latest oil price today is about like $80. You know, like it hasn't shot up to like $125 as it was before. And I think that was largely due to China's voluntary cutback of its oil imports. You know, China has now, by all indications, cut about 5 million barrels of oil per day. And that's huge. That's a big number. The total, as you mentioned, the total number coming out of the Persian Gulf before the war was 20 million barrels of oil per day. Now, China just voluntarily, for whatever reason, to cut back 5 million barrels of oil import per day. That is the fact, I think, saved a lot of the global South nations. Because let's face it, when there's an oil shortage, the rich countries, they may have to pay for higher prices, but they're not going to have real shortages because they will be able to outbid the poor global South countries for the limited oil that's on the market. And by China cutting back on its own intake of the global oil supply, it created a lot of slack for poor countries, particularly in Southeast Asia and South Asia. You know, I'm talking about countries like I'm living right now, Indonesia, Philippines, but also countries like India, but also countries like Australia, where you live. They all, even though Australia is not a global South country, but Australia do depend on oil imports. They do actually depend on particularly jet fuel imports from China. So all these countries essentially got their ass saved by China. And you know, like I just recently saw I think it was a mainstream media like a CNN or BBC. They say, "Oh, we don't actually know how China did it. We don't actually know how China did it." But and they come up with different conspiracy theories, like, "Oh, why would China do that?" Maybe like they throw out a tinfoil hat theories, like maybe when Trump went to China, he worked out some secret deal with Xi Jinping that maybe the only reason China agreed to help out is because Trump must made some secret concession over Taiwan or something like that.
Then there's the kind of more potentially nefarious kind of, I'll be frank, kind of tinfoil hat kind of interpretation here, which is, and I think we have to consider it, which is that there was some kind of secret deal struck. So we know that the Trump administration was in Beijing through this crisis for a very high-profile talks. It was around that time that you did see China pulling back most aggressively on its crude imports. The United States military transfer a bunch of military equipment from Asia, from, let's say, Taiwan, back to the Middle East in order to kind of buttress defenses there.
I mean, it's completely ridiculous because, like, why can't you just concentrate on the facts? The fact is China voluntarily reduced its oil imports, and that saved the asses of a lot of the global South nations. Just stick with that. You know, don't go throw out tinfoil hat theories with no factual evidence. Well, I like to get your take on that, Dr. Powell.
Yeah. Look, the China stuff, it's absolutely true that China voluntarily reduced its take of global seaborne oil, and that's had a demonstrable effect on global prices, much to the benefit of buyers in many parts of the world, including in the global South, as you say. I think the other thing that it tells us is that if all of these various attacks around the world, whether it's Venezuela, the attacks on Russian refineries, the French interceding on Russian, container or petroleum tankers through to Iran. If all of this is about China, and maybe it is, right? If all of this is about China, well, it hasn't worked very well, has it? Because what we've seen is the ability of China to dictate market prices as the world's largest buyer. This was unforeseen by many people. Clearly, there's been a view around that China has a vulnerability in relation to oil, and that this was going to be the vector upon which China, or one of the vectors upon which China was to be contained. And you see this view from people inside Washington, of course, who will articulate this in various think tank reports. And you'll see this view from various sections of the sort of wider commentariat. I'm sure that there is an obsession about China inside Washington. So let's just accept that the politicians inside the Beltway have a China bug. But it doesn't mean that these initiatives, if they are driven by that obsession, are ultimately founded on good strategy and a good understanding of how the world works. And clearly, China was better able to handle this eventuality than anticipated all round. I've written a piece on my Substack, a fairly detailed piece about China's preparedness for this. And it's been a preparation that's been undertaken for over 2 decades. This wasn't preparation that began 2 years ago. This was preparation that began 20 years ago. On top of that, what we've now seen is the material capacity, a genuine material power of China to dictate the global oil market. Not Saudi Arabia, not the United States, not the so-called swing states on the supply side. China is the swing buyer that makes the market go up and down. And it looks like that China will enter the market when prices drop below $55 a barrel, and will leave the market when prices go above $85 or $90 a barrel, which means that China is in a position now to essentially modulate global oil prices. That's real power.
There's think tanks like Hudson Institute that said, oh, this whole Iran war is Trump administration's 5D chess to get to China in order to, to choke off the supplies from Venezuela and Iran, to choke off China's growth. And China actually, the data just came in and it showed that China's economic growth for the first half of 2026 is growing at 4.7%. That's double the rate of the U.S. growth and the European and the U.S. European allies. So which makes it more ridiculous of the kind of the China collapse narrative that's been peddled around